Welcome back to the Play Action Pod. My name is Brennan. Beside me is obviously Braque. We're here to bring you our 29th episode. And, this one's a little different because there's no games this weekend besides Army versus Navy, which classic, which we're not really going to talk about, unfortunately. I'm sorry, you Army and Navy fans out there. But we're just going to kind of skip over that one just because, both teams, I don't think either of them are over 500.
One of them
one's like 4-6.
One of them's 5-6 and is pushing for. I don't even know if they can be a bowl game because all the bowls are settled. Yeah. Maybe they're already in one, but
yeah, we're just gonna kind of skip over those. Today is a special episode. It's a transfer portal talk. Yep. We got to come up with some slang for it,
Yeah, something.
Between like the portal, the transfer. I don't know.
Something.
We'll figure something out. Right now it's kind of boring, but we're just going to update you guys on, the transfer portal and who is entered themselves in the portal. We mentioned a couple names last episode, mostly quarterbacks. I think it was like 5 quarterbacks we talked about, including McNair, Leary, Slovis, Card, and Mertz. And then I guess DJ as well, DJ Uiagalelei. But, there's been a lot of commotion so far in the portal. And, Brock's going to keep us updated and tell us who's in the portal and also where he thinks they should land, based off of what kind of player they are and, where they best would fit. So you want to start things off for us?
Yeah. So just kind of with the places that I have them going, there's kind of a couple criteria that I went through. I went through like players leaving, for the draft or seniors. So like, for example, if a starting quarterback is leaving for the draft or is a senior and just is done with eligibility. That kind of went into my thinking. And I also kind of went, where are they from? So like a player born in Florida, played high school in Florida. Maybe that's, somewhere where they would want to go back to. Or, kind of the last kind of thing that I was kind of thinking about is who recruited them, heavily in high school and was maybe in that final, top 5, top 4, top 3. Dang. So those are kind of some of the things I went through to decide, where the fits would be for these players. But
so this isn't just some random speculations like, I think he might go to UCLA just because, that's just my guess.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you went into the nitty gritty and you were like, okay, he might go here because, he was recruited similarly in previous teams, stuff like that. So, it's definitely more in depth than some might think.
Yeah, and it's definitely still early too, but some of the players even posted offers that they had been getting.
Okay.
Too. So there's even some players that have been updated based upon that. So
all right, let's hear it.
All right, yeah. So starting with DJ Uiagalelei, quarterback from Clemson. I think he has a lot of fits across any team across the nation. I think would be greatly benefited by him. But I do think he is going to go West Coast. I think he talked about potentially going West Coast and playing with his brother. So the 3 teams that I went for were UCLA, Oregon State, and Arizona State. All Pac-12 teams, all West Coast. And I think all 3, it makes sense for him.
Need a quarterback.
They need a quarterback. For UCLA, DTR's, out of eligibility, so they're going to be needing a quarterback. And there's great potential for him to actually team up with his brother there at UCLA.
Yeah.
So I think that would make a lot of sense. Oregon State, we've talked about all season, is a quarterback away.
Yeah, that's true.
If they could get a quarterback, they'd be a really dangerous team. And, I think DJ would be a perfect fit up in Corvallis. And then lastly, Arizona State, obviously new head coach in Kenny Dillingham. I think it would make a lot of sense to bring in, a quarterback of his caliber that you can, kind of do what he did with Bo Nix. Mm-hmm. Bo Nix obviously had a huge resurgence this year. And I think that'd make a lot of sense for, DJ to maybe go to ASU.
Yeah. I'm curious, could DJ seriously turn things around for those programs? Because, we kind of were critical of how he was playing all year at Clemson. Granted, Clemson is probably a higher program than all those teams listed, I feel like. Would you say that? Maybe UCLA. UCLA, they're good, but I think Clemson is on that playoff standard every single year.
I'd agree.
So I think that, the Clemson expectation is a lot higher than maybe the UCLA expectation. Maybe recently, but DJ, he struggled this past year. I mean, Clemson only lost 2 games, but I think it was more of the talent that surrounded him that was responsible for maybe their success. But or maybe it's just us expecting Clemson to be an undefeated ACC championship at the end of every year, and maybe DJ just didn't perform to that expectation, which is a very high standard. But do you think that he could seriously turn things around for one of those 3 programs, or if not all 3?
The more that I think about DJ, I think Dabo really hit a problem. And if you think of the last couple quarterbacks that Dabo's had, you think Deshaun Watson could do everything at the college level. There wasn't a thing that he couldn't do. And then who steps up after him? Trevor Lawrence, a guy who can do everything at the college level. And I do think DJ is a little bit more limited. I think his deep ball isn't as great, and I don't think he has as good of arm strength as those two. So I think that kind of hurt him at Clemson. And I think he just needs to get better as a decision maker. And I think these 3 programs could hopefully develop those characteristics for him and turn him into a better quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it just takes a little change. Maybe it just takes some different players to be around him to be able to see what DJ's full potential is, because I think that he's much better than the way he performed this year. So, all right, next up is Devin Leary, quarterback, NC State. This was a really interesting one for me because I was trying to think of places that he would really, really fit well in. And I know we talked a little bit about the 1-year rental kind of thing. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what Devin Leary is going to be. And so with that being said, the 3 teams I went for was Florida, Michigan State, and Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I went with Florida because I know they have a really talented freshman QB coming in. And I think if you throw Devin Leary into Florida and let him kind of groom the freshman quarterback for, a year, and then he'll be able to start his sophomore year, kind of like what they did with Anthony Richardson a couple years ago. I think that makes a lot of sense. For Michigan State, I think they just need to get better at the position. I don't think Peyton Thorne's that great. They obviously had a down season. And, there's rumors of maybe Dante Moore, the 5-star quarterback, flipping from Oregon to Michigan State. So kind of same situation as Florida. I think that maybe makes a lot of sense. And I think Wisconsin too, you're going to get Luke Fickell, who is used to, developing quarterbacks, in Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
So I think it makes a lot of sense for him to go up to Wisconsin under new head coach Luke Fickell, and maybe get a resurgence in his career.
Yeah, that's very interesting because NC State was a team that was, like we mentioned before, getting playoff hype at the beginning of the season. Obviously, things panned out differently, and it was a bit of a disappointing year based on how everyone expected them to play. Some were saying that they were going to run the table and win the ACC championship, and they'd be in the playoff, but things don't work out that way. So I think Devin Leary entering the portal does make sense. Maybe he just wants to win somewhere else. And 3 of those teams that you've listed off, it does make sense why he would go there. Based off of the information that you're giving. But yeah, interesting. Devin Leary. Who's next?
Next up, we got Hudson Card, quarterback, Texas. And the 3 teams I've gone for, I went for the University of Utah, Oklahoma State, and Nebraska. And starting with Utah's in a weird position. They obviously have Cam Rising, has said he's going to leave the university. We don't know if that's 100%, going to be the situation, but I would expect Cam Rising to not be there going into next season. So, they got obviously the talented freshman, Nate Johnson, 4-star kid out of Clovis, California. And then they got Bryson Barnes, who, played in the Rose Bowl, obviously, last year on the last couple drives, and then obviously played a full game against Washington State. But if I'm Utah, I'm kind of looking at both those QBs, and I'm just not really confident that they can, take you to the next level, because you've been building a lot as a program. You're back-to-back Pac-12 champions. You're on your 2nd straight Rose Bowl. I think you want a quarterback that can come in and can take you to that next level. And when it comes to Texas transfer quarterbacks to Utah, they've done pretty well.
Because Cam Rising came from Texas, correct?
Yep. As well as, Jaquindon Jackson too, who's now obviously transitioned to running back. So I think Hudson Card makes a lot of sense for him. It's one of those, 1 year rentals, gives Nate Johnson a year to, improve, get better. And then, by his, sophomore season, hopefully he's ready to, take control of that team.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense.
And then going on with Oklahoma State, they lost Spencer Sanders to the portal, which was a big surprise to me.
You didn't even announce that Oklahoma State was one of your.
Oklahoma State?
You're just like going along with Oklahoma State.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They were one of the.
So Oklahoma State is
second on that list.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I just have them on the list because Spencer Sanders hit the portal, which I didn't expect.
That was weird.
So, why not, stay in conference, go to a team who's going to be quarterback needy. And, I think he could give them something similar to what Spencer Sanders was giving them.
Yeah.
So, and then last team was University of Nebraska. Obviously, Matt Rule had a lot of success in the Big 12 at Baylor. So he knows the conference well. He knows kind of the style of quarterbacks that, that conference recruits, and he's going to want his own guy, I think. I don't, that's no disrespect to what Nebraska has right now. I believe Nebraska actually does have a Texas quarterback in Casey Thompson, Texas transfer. So I think he's going to want a quarterback of his own. And I think Hudson Card makes a lot of sense for Nebraska, especially, under Matt Rule.
Yeah. Seems like three teams that are kind of in dire need of, a quarterback in, the next season. Maybe just kind of buying them a year to let the young guys develop. But I mean, yeah, that all makes sense for sure.
All right. The next up, we got Trey Sanders, running back from Alabama.
Wow. First of all.
Yeah,
that's surprising to see an Alabama guy hit the portal.
There's been a couple Bama guys that have hit the
portal. Bama guys. Disappointed with how the season panned out this year for them. And, maybe some complications with some staff there. And they're just like, we want to take our talent to, another program.
Yeah. So the first team that I have is Colorado, because I know we talked a little bit last episode about he tweeted out saying, Coach, Coach Prime,
come get me.
Coach Prime, come get me. So I think Colorado is definitely a team to watch for Trey Sanders for that reason.
You could put Colorado under all these players.
You really could.
I feel like no one's safe.
And looking at my list, I really don't have a lot of Colorado, so you could really put Colorado.
It's just these teams. Default. We got Colorado on every single player by default, just because you get one text from Deion Sanders Deion
Sanders,
and you're just like, no, I'm there.
I think the reason I didn't put a ton of Colorado is I just really don't. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to expect, from him, and I don't know what pathway he's going to go with.
But this one based off the tweet does make sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for Colorado there. And then, I talked about early in the episode, maybe going back to their home state. I got Florida State next for Trey Sanders. He's a running back from Florida. And I think Florida could also be in this conversation as well. So Florida State or Florida.
Okay.
Even Miami, you could argue, is maybe in the situation if he's trying to go back home. And then the last team I had was Texas, because Texas was a team that recruited him really heavily out of high school. So,
okay.
Maybe with Bijan Robinson heading out to the NFL draft, maybe that's, something that, Texas looks to get as a transfer running back in Trey Sanders.
And I'm sure anyone who comes out of Alabama is definitely going to be getting some attention.
Yeah.
Because, not a lot of guys transfer out of there. Same with Clemson. Not a lot of players transfer out of those schools. There's a lot of success in both programs. And as they didn't make the playoff this year, as we expect them to almost every year, maybe some guys are looking to make some changes. So, yeah, it's something very interesting.
Next up, we got Theo Wees, wide receiver from Oklahoma. And yeah, this was another interesting one for me. The first team I went with was LSU, because I think with, Keyshawn Boutte coming back, put Theo on the other side. You obviously got Jaden Daniels still there. I think that could be a really, crazy trio.
Yeah.
Next year for LSU.
They're reloading.
Yeah, I think they're going to look to the portal to get some talent.
And I think LSU, with how they performed this year, a lot of people are wanting to get involved with that program.
Yeah.
I mean, with Brian Kelly to turn things around and, you know, make the SEC championship in his first year there was very impressive, and it definitely caught the eye of, you know, some athletes out there.
And then the second team I went for, kind of similar situation with LSU, was Washington.
Okay.
You know, obviously Michael Penix had a crazy year, you know, and he announced that he's actually coming back and is going to do another year at Washington. So, you know, why not get him a true number one wide receiver, you know, 5-star kid, you know, Theo Weiss, to have him thrown to? That'd be a great connection for them next year.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, the last team kind of going on with a team that heavily recruited him out of high school was Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, they recruited him.
And obviously, you know, with Texas A&M, they got the NIL opportunities.
They got the money.
So
I mean, if he goes there, then we know why he's going there, because it's not for necessarily a successful football program based off of how they played this year. But, you know, maybe he gets a bag and we'll see him in the Aggies uniform.
Yeah. So, you know, those are my teams for Theo Weiss. And next up, we got JQ Hardaway, cornerback from Cincinnati. So obviously Luke Fickell leaving, heading up to Wisconsin, might have had an impact in him, you know, putting his name in the portal. But for JQ, I just kind of went, I think he was kind of underlooked as a corner when he was being recruited. So I just kind of looked at, you know, teams that he could go and have an instant impact and a big impact for well.
A big team.
And even the NIL opportunities, I think would be very, very good for him as well. So for JQ, I went with Georgia first. Obviously, they're losing, you know, Keely Ringo to the draft. You know, they're stud corner. So I think he would be a perfect replacement. Just slide him into Keely's spot, and, you know, be a nice little filler for Georgia. And then I also went with Florida. Same thing. They could really use a good, you know, corner one, and, you know, I think the NIL opportunities in Florida would be really good for him. And then the last team I went with was USC, because I think USC needs 11 new players on defense. Yeah. So why not start? Why not start with getting, you know, a good cornerback one for your team to, you know, build around.
Plus probably some money, you know?
Yeah, definitely some money as well.
And I mean, USC, they're a team that their numbers were good on defense. And, you know, the way that Joel Klatt described it, I know that we were both very fond of him, but the way he described it was the reason that USC, their numbers are so well on defense is because of how productive their offense is. You know, this offense, you know, they're never really down and they score early. So it allows that defense to be more aggressive than if you were, say the game was tied or you're trying to come from behind. You try to play a little more conservative, I feel like. So, I mean, when you have Caleb Williams and those receivers at USC and you're putting up numbers real quick, then, you know, it allows your defense to be more aggressive. And we saw them get a little bit exposed, actually very much exposed in the Pac-12 championship. So I think reloading with, you know, some defensive talent is a need for USC to be able to compete next year for a potential playoff, because we saw that was kind of what held them back. And, you know, for Cincinnati, they're making the move to the Big 12 next year. So I think that, and especially with Fickell leaving, I think that a lot of players might follow this trend by hopping in the transfer portal, because they kind of see the route of where this program is going in the future. Because, I mean, first time being in a Power 5 conference and you're going on a first year coach, it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to be successful making that big of a jump. And so I think a lot of players will see that and they might follow the trend with you know, JQ.
Yeah, actually kind of interesting, kind of going off on a little tangent for a sec. Cincinnati did just hire Louisville's head coach.
They did.
To be their new head coach. And it's funny because Louisville and Cincinnati play each other in the bowl game. So
when do they play? Oh, in the bowl game.
In the bowl game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So in a couple weeks they'll be playing, and they're playing at Fenway Park in Chicago.
Yeah.
The Cubs Stadium.
With Fenway, that's the Red Sox.
Oh yeah, Red Sox. Wow. I'm not a baseball guy.
Yeah, that's why we do a college football
Yeah, so
podcast,
I'm
not the
not a
MLB
baseball
podcast.
But yeah, Fenway. That's right. And they don't have enough space on both sides, so they're putting both teams side by side.
No way.
So
Might see some scrapping on the sidelines.
I think we're almost guaranteed.
Almost
to see
guaranteed.
some
We got
scrapping.
Fickle throwing hands with the Louisville coach. Could be something we see at the bowl game. So definitely tune in there. But who's next?
So the next one, I don't know a lot about this kid because I don't know a lot about his university either. But we got Kyle Morlock, tight end from Shorter University. That's the Shorter College, Shorter University, Shorter Community, Shorter. That's what it was.
How did he sneak on this list?
Apparently, he's very talented, very very talented. So he was rated a 4-star in the portal,
Okay.
and so
The list being anyone, because he wants to be seen.
yeah,
Because we cover a podcast and I've never heard of this guy.
Nah, I haven't either. And so this was kind of more like kind of a blunt kind of teams that I picked for him.
Who just needs tight ends?
Needs tight ends kind of thing. And I did notice that he has a visit planned for Florida State.
Okay.
So that's also why I put Florida State on the list. But
Gotcha.
so yeah, with that first team being Florida State, he's got a visit scheduled. I believe it's December 9th to head out and, check out the campus. So, maybe Florida State is a real option for him. But the other two teams I went with were Georgia, because they're obviously losing Darnell Washington to the draft. And I don't know, I think Brock Bowers still has another year. So I think
So pending on him.
So I think, Morlock and Bowers together could be a really good tight end duo. But they're obviously losing Darnell Washington, their 6'7" tight end, to the draft. And then the second team I went with was Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They're obviously losing, Michael Mayer to the NFL draft. So, what better than, get him a replacement through the portal in Kyle Morlock.
Yeah, so two teams that really utilize that tight end position. We've seen that this year from Georgia. We've seen that this year from Notre Dame. And I mean, Georgia losing Washington, that'll be interesting. Who's going to replace him? And they'll be losing their quarterback to whatever insurance company wants to hire someone for their sales team.
Allstate.
Yeah, so Allstate's got Stetson Bennett set up for his sales position.
Yep.
That they're opening up. Probably an internship to start, but anyways, yeah, two teams that really utilize their tight ends. So I think it would be a good fit for him. I mean, like I said, I don't know anything about Kyle Morlock.
Yeah, I don't.
But
know
I'd love to see his potential this year as maybe he transfers to a Power 5 school. So yeah, who's next?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Spencer Sanders, surprise entry from Oklahoma State, or at least it was a surprise to me. I didn't really expect him to hit the portal. But kind of a similar trend with repeat teams. Obviously I went with Utah again. I think Utah is going to need a quarterback, and I think Spencer Sanders is just another one-year rental. That'd be a really good
another
fit.
rental. 1 year lease.
Just a little 1-year rental for him. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then same with Florida. I also got Florida on this list. I think Spencer would be a good 1-year rental for them down in the SEC. And then last I went with Notre Dame because their quarterback also entered the portal.
Oh.
Kind of surprising, Drew Pine. So, I think Spencer Sanders could go up and be a real focal point for Notre Dame.
That was a surprising one to see him, jump in the portal.
Yeah.
I know that Oklahoma State, we expected them to see them, in the Big 12 championship, at least. I thought maybe they'd win it after they did lose it last year on that last play of the game. And, I saw that they were reloading this year, had a lot of guys coming back. So I kind of expected to see them in the Big 12 championship. Obviously, things didn't pan out that way. We saw TCU and Kansas State instead. So, I mean, Oklahoma State, they've struggled these past few weeks. And to see Spencer Sanders in the portal was, it was surprising to me at least.
Yeah.
So, next.
Next up, we have right now the number 1 rated player in the portal, Fentrell Cypress, cornerback from Virginia. And this was a tough one for me because being the number 1 player in the portal, you're going to get offers from everywhere.
Yeah.
So picking just 3 teams, for him to go to was going to be tough for me. So I kind of just went with the trends that I've been talking about. I'm going to go with Penn State. They're obviously losing Joey Porter Jr. to the draft. And, what better than, get a cornerback of his level to slot right into Joey's spot and be an instant replacement. I went with South Carolina for a couple of reasons. I believe he is from South Carolina.
Okay.
And they're obviously losing their first round corner to the draft. His name is escaping me right now. It'll come back to me in a second, though.
Yeah.
So that's why I went South Carolina. And then, same thing with Georgia. Obviously, Keely Ringo is heading off to the NFL draft. So why not get a replacement to fit him in?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know he was the number one, player in the draft so far. Fentrell Cypress. But, I'm sure that he wants to get a little more attention. I don't think Virginia was very good this year. And, being in the ACC, it's a little less competitive. So maybe he wants to, take a step up, play in the SEC, Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12, and, face some better competition, get him prepared for, maybe an NFL run for sure.
That South Carolina corner was Cam Smith.
Cam Smith. Okay.
I can't believe I forgot about Cam.
It was escaping him, but
it was escaping my
he got
mind.
the name now.
But yeah,
Cool.
I think he'd be a great replacement for Cam Smith down in South
Sweet.
Carolina.
So we got 4 more. Looks like 4 more.
4 more to go.
Okay, sweet.
We'll go Dasan McCullough or McCullough.
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 I don't know.
McCullough. I don't know. Edge rusher from Indiana. This one's a little bit more simple. He was crystal balled to go to Oklahoma. So I think we will end up seeing him at Oklahoma. But just to kind of keep the list, with 3
Consistent,
per team. Consistent, That's a good word for it. I went with Michigan and Alabama for the other 2 teams. Michigan, they've developed a lot of good edge rushers, the last couple of years, and their defenses are always, towards the top. So, why not get another great edge rusher, stay in conference in the Big Ten and just travel up to Michigan? I think that made a lot of sense. And then, Alabama, they've obviously have Will Anderson heading to the draft. So, what better way than, get a really talented edge rusher to hopefully, lessen that loss of Will Anderson.
And what a better way to get a potential Mercedes-Benz or something.
Yeah.
Upgrade the whip, heading over to Bama. I'm sure that they got plenty of money.
Nice little NIL deal.
If Dasan is looking to, upgrade his living and maybe an apartment or something like that, new whip, he'll definitely take Alabama into consideration. But 3 more.
So I went with Dominic Lovett, wide receiver from Missouri. And this is an interesting one because it sounds like this was strictly NIL based. Missouri couldn't offer him
really
the NIL money he was looking for. So for my 3 teams, I went with, teams that can offer him that NIL money. So I started with Oregon. They've obviously lost a couple wide receivers to the portal so far. So they're going to want to, get a really talented receiver back in, maybe help Bo Nix if he returns to the program next year. That'd be interesting for them. And then I also went with, Alabama. Alabama's been missing wide receivers all season.
Yeah.
So, they could get a high-powered, wide receiver into the program. I think that'd be great for them, overall. And then last, we talked a little bit about LSU with, Keyshawn Butte coming back. Why not partner him with another dynamic, receiver on the outside and, Dominic Lovett.
Yeah. And reload for that team. I think that LSU is going to be a serious contender next year.
Yeah.
Based off of how they played this year and also based off of, who's coming back for next year. So yeah, that's crazy. Dude, shout out to Braque. I mean, dude put in all that effort, all that research, he's scrolling through all the stuff we need to know about, putting together a good list and, figuring out where he thinks these players are going to go. I mean, the transfer portal is overwhelmingly full. Like you mentioned, I mean, there's tons of players in the portal. We probably only got to like maybe 1%, but, we're just covering probably the most impactful players and the most significant players that we see in the portal. And, tomorrow we're probably going to click refresh and it's going to say, it's going to be a whole new list of players. So we're going to try to keep you guys up to date with everything you need to know about the portal. where they end up signing and everything. But, like I said, dude, big shout out to Braque. I mean, putting in that effort, did a great job. I mean, that's a pretty big list, and to be able to do that is very impressive, I would say. But I think that's going to wrap things up for episode 29. We'll be back for episode 30 pretty soon to start previewing, the bowl games as bowl season is upon us. But make sure you follow the socials. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube, and TikTok. It's all at the Play Action Pod, except for our Twitter is going to be Play Action Pods. I know that Brock spends a good time on Twitter, keeping us updated on there. So if you have time, make sure you follow there. But, like and subscribe, and follow our YouTube, and we'll be back for episode 30.